everybody, welcome back to Daily Flash. I'm Andrea Jackson. When it comes to married couples, finances are at the top of the list when it comes to disagreements. And if you are thinking about saying an I do to someone, you may want to have a convo about the don'ts when it comes to money. Joining us to talk about it is Julia Pugachevsky. She is a senior health reporter for Business Insider. Julia, welcome to Daily Flash.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So what are the advantages, would you say, and disadvantages of couples keeping joint bank accounts versus keeping separate accounts?
Yeah, so to start with joint accounts, some of the benefits, couples find it sometimes is simpler to just have everything in one place, especially if, say, you're saving for something big like a house. You don't want to look at how much money you have across 5 different accounts, so it's just easier to have it one spot. And some couples also find it, reassuring. You have that full transparency, you know exactly how much each person is contributing. Um, so they find it simpler. Also in the tragic event that one partner dies, ownership just usually automatically goes to the other person in the account versus with separate accounts, you need a named beneficiary. So in that regard, it's simpler as well. With separate accounts, you have a little bit more independence. If you anticipate, for example, getting into arguments over how much each person is spending, you can kind of avoid that a little bit more with having separate accounts. Some people also really enjoy even just being able to surprise each other. You don't have the charge come up on the joint bank account.
True.
Yeah, so I actually interviewed a couple and they mentioned that was something that they really liked, that they could still surprise each other with quite lavish gifts that they otherwise wouldn't spend the money on. I will say too, so I wrote a story where I interviewed 4 married couples, and most of them had a combination of a joint and separate account. So I would say couples don't have to, if they're not unsure which one feels right, the nice thing is you really don't have to commit to one or the other. You can actually do both. My husband and I also do both. So it's very common to find that the middle ground and just do both.
And Julia, you mentioned something important there, transparency, and I think trust goes along with that. How can couples establish financial trust when combining their finances for the first time?
Yeah, I would say communication. I know that's kind of a relationship cliche, but it's so important to be, like you said, transparent and open, and ideally early on, right? You don't want to start having financial conversations right as you're about to move in, right as you're about to get married. Ideally, you start the moment you feel your relationship is serious, that you want to combine your lives together. So having that communication is important. And I would say it shouldn't just be about how much you make or if you have any debt. It should also be about your relationship, your individual relationships to money. What was your family's attitude toward money and how did it shape you? I think it's very common for couples to have differences in that regard.
Sure.
One person could be, a spender, the other could be more of a saver, and their family history could really, influence that part of their personality. So I think understanding that can help you kind of look at each other with empathy and then also bridge those gaps when you inevitably hit those pain points in your
Well, I think
relationship.
when you end up combining or getting a joint checking account or shared credit cards, the credit score is something that will
Yes.
come up, and you'll find out really what kind of a saver or a spender you might be getting involved with. What strategies can couples use to split expenses when they have different income levels and maybe different credit scores?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it so varies on the couple and how you prefer to split your finances and even where you are in the relationship, I think. So let's say maybe you just moved in or you're about to move in, and you have, like a financial disparity in how much you make. You might say, we still want to split everything evenly. That feels fair to us. Or you might say, if one of us makes more money, I do want, a different apartment, and the person who makes more pays a little bit more. You could handle that through Venmo. Couples deal with this in so many different ways. I think, others prefer to have that joint account, put everything in, and they don't even think about it as one person making more and one making less. They just view it purely as a team. We're putting everything towards our mortgage or everything towards childcare. It doesn't matter as much. One couple I interviewed, and I thought this was such an interesting idea, was they combine everything in a joint account, which they started early into their marriage. And now what they do is they budget out something called fun money, and they take out an even amount per person. So it doesn't really matter if one person makes more or less. They have, I think it was like 10% of their income to spend individually however they choose, but it comes from the joint account that they both contribute to. So all to say, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It kind of depends on your comfort level, and again, having those communication and those conversations as a couple.
We just have a few seconds left here, Julia. Any advice when it comes to dealing with a money-related argument?
Yeah, I know, I keep mentioning communication. I think
Sure.
consistent communication is key. One couple that I spoke to brought up a really great point that it's really hard to have big surprises, right? Like you
Yeah.
discover your partner has a secret day trading habit. If you are, if you're talking regularly and weekly, bi-weekly, a lot of couples have even calendar invites, in their phones to kind of sit down and talk about these
Sure.
topics. I think that consistency makes it less daunting, first of all,
Very true.
but also just you feel more secure. So I
Julia,
highly recommend that.
thank you so much. It sounds like a fascinating article. You can find more information on Julia, couples and finances. Just head on over to businessinsider.com.